I may have been wrong. I really may have been wrong about the AT2035 and what type of microphone it is. I have a lot of explaining to do. Welcome back to the Rebel Tech channel. I'm Justin, and in this video, yes, we're talking about the AT2035, and I'm going to show you that it's not exactly what I expected, and not exactly a microphone that just added switches and beefed up the price. So yes, the AT2035, a microphone that I was very skeptical about. I had watched videos, I had done some research on it, but not enough to really be super informed, just enough to understand what type of microphone it is and a slight hint of how it sounds. But I was hunting around for a good deal on one, and I got a good deal on eBay for it. I didn't want to pay full price because it wasn't a microphone that I needed. And then again, I don't need any more microphones, to be honest, but it's one that I wanted to cover, in which case I wanted to get a good deal on one, and I did. So I'm very happy on that. And I'm very happy that I did, because this is much more than a beefed up 2020 with switches added on for 150 bucks. It's a totally different microphone altogether. And I'm excited to put these other microphones like the AT2020 and the AT4040 head to head with this microphone to see if those differences really stand out compared to its little brother and its older brother. But this video is all about the AT2035, and in very classic Rebel Tech fashion, here's a montage of the AT2035. So now that we showed this microphone off and showed you how cool it looks, how simple and sleek it is, we're going to talk about the build and its dimensions. This microphone, basically, right off the bat, my first impressions, it's a little bit of a beefier version of the AT2020. It's still a part of the 2020 series by Audio-Technica, so it has that standard round look and the front-facing capsule, all that stuff. But there's some subtle differences that you see, and the major one coming from the AT2020 is the fact that there's no ring around it, like a sticker ring around it with the logo and the text and everything. This is actually a printed logo and text right on there. And I was surprised on the similarities between the 2020 and the 2035, not because that I was shocked that the 20 series stayed in a certain lane, but I was surprised that they didn't do a little bit more, and surprised in the fact that it was very familiar. And I don't mean this in a bad way. I'm just making a observation of what I saw and my first impression. Now, of course, the things that stand out are the switches on the back. Just like the AT4040, it has a pad, -10 dB on that, and a low cutoff, also at 80 Hz, just like the AT4040. Now that we talked about the aesthetics, let's talk about the weight and the dimensions. The AT2035 is weighing in at 403 grams, which is equivalent to 14.2 ounces. This also doesn't include the weight of the shock mount. Moving along to the dimensions, it is measuring up at 170 millimeters, which is also 6.69 inches long, by 52 millimeters or 2.05 inches, which is its maximum body diameter. Now that we got through the build and the aesthetics of the AT2035, let's talk about some techie stuff and a section I like to call Techy Talk. And we'll talk about the specs, the frequency response, all that stuff. I'm going to put up a graphic of all the specs that I feel that are important to the regular person using this. I'm not going to bore you with all the specifics on circuitry, but afterwards I'm going to talk about some of those things in depth. So a couple things that stand out for me are its sensitivity and the impedance. The impedance is pretty good at 120 ohms, which is standard. The sensitivity at negative 33 decibels is fine. It works great, and we'll get into some noise rejection, some self-noise, and all that stuff in a little bit. But for the most part, it's pretty standard, pretty typical. All these specs are pretty standard and typical for your condenser microphone, especially your Audio-Technica, and even more specifically the 20 series. So next up, let's get into the frequency response curve. And to be honest, this one's going to be fairly easy to do because it's very simple and I like it. I really do like the way this thing looks. So starting off with the low end, we have a flat section right below 0 decibels. Pretty standard natural curve. If you add on the low cutoff, which let's engage it right now. Now that you have the low cutoff on, you notice that when I get a little closer, as I was before, I was about like 4 or 5 inches, maybe like, yeah, 4 inches away. You notice that the low ends, those below 80 decibels, maybe that rumble of my voice or whatever, are not as prominent and not really there. Because we're rolling those off, it's literally taking that and taking a shelf and scooping it right out of there. And that's in the microphone itself. So it's just cutting off those frequencies altogether right off the bat. Now as we move past the low end, it is flat. It is very flat. And I love a flat curve in the middle because it gives a little bit more flexibility of how you work with it. And it's not too muddy, it's not too up or down in that section where most of our voices usually land in. Of course, if you have a lower voice, it's going to be closer to the low end, and if you get higher, it goes to the higher. But for the most part, all of us land in that midsection there, and you notice that it's very flat. This flat section is about from 200 to about 2K. Maybe a bump there right before 2K, maybe at like 1.5, but not significant enough to really make a difference. Now, again, like I said, this is going to be a simple frequency response because there's not much going on. It's really flat, but the high ends do have some presence boosts. So you're seeing around 6K, you got a bump there. And around 7, it's a dip. After 7, it starts to rise up around, let's say about 14, 13, and then dip off into the abyss, as we always do at that point because most of us don't hear that high. Next thing we're going to do in the studio is a silence test. And we're just going to be quiet for a little bit, like 10 seconds. And I'll let you know how much I boosted in post. That was with the low cutoff on. Here's another one without it. All right, there's your silence test. You may have noticed the dehumidifier in the back. I don't know for sure, but you'll know and I'll know in post. And also, let me know if you noticed the difference between the low cutoff being on and off with that test. It's a very interesting concept. So keep that in mind and know the environment that you're in when you're going to be using these microphones. And that's why we go into other environments. Speaking of that, let's pop in the booth. We're going to go into an untreated room and test all these types of environments to show you a variety. And a lot of you may encounter that untreated room because a lot of people don't have a treated room. I will point out a couple of things when we're in there to maybe help. So let's get to it. All right, so we're in the booth right now, and I have the AT2035 hooked up, no switches on, and this is what you're going to experience if you are a voiceover person doing some ADR, possibly doing some singing, any type of performance that you want to have a fairly controlled environment. Now, this booth is not perfect, but it's pretty good considering the price and considering the space that I have. So what we're going to do in the booth is go through a bunch of tests and see what you guys think of how this microphone sounds in a environment that really shows how strong this microphone really is. And I'm about like 4 or 5 inches away, maybe 6 inches away roughly. And of course I can't get too far away. I can move it to there and it's about like a foot away. But you want to get up on there. Not too much that you get a little bit of a proximity effect, which if you go a little bit closer, you hear the proximity effect of it. And I have my nice nifty pop filter here to avoid those plosives. Speaking of the plosives, let's give a little bit of a test of those plosives compared from the natural microphone and the pop filter being on. Gonna make a pop filter video eventually. I'm hoping to have one out before the end of the month, but we'll see what happens. So yeah, it's not too egregious if you don't have a pop filter, but if you're using a microphone of any type, it doesn't matter. You should have a pop filter, or at least a windscreen. What I'm really noticing is a nice midsection. That's the first thing that stands out for me. And that flat midsection really is nice, and it definitely gives you a nice smooth sound, and I really, really enjoy it. I will critique it just a little bit for my voice. For anyone who has a nasally kind of voice like mine, that mid-lows, they might be a little too much. You could always cut it in post and clean it up a little more, but for the most part, I really like this. With the high ends, I feel that, at least hearing it right now, I don't feel the presence boost as much. I don't feel the those highs being pronounced and giving you a little bit more texture and a little more sparkly goodness on the high ends. It's there, but it's very subtle. And of course, you could fix this in post and you could add whatever frequency you want in post, but this is how the microphone is naturally. So the next thing we're going to do is I'm going to go around a little bit, see what the off-axis rejection is in a booth setting. Going around to the 90-degree on the stage right section, this is what you're going to hear with my voice. And I'm about 6 inches away, roughly. Now on stage left, on the other side, we're about 6 inches away. And this is what you're going to hear with the off-axis rejection. This is going to be your off-axis rejection for 180 degrees. And it's fairly good. I really enjoy the rejection it has. And there's very minimal noise. Next up, let's check that low cutoff and see how it affects my voice in a booth setting, and I'll do a little proximity effect to have you emphasize the use of that. All right, so the low cutoff is engaged, and we're still at the same distance that we were before. And I noticed that there's less rumble in my voice and less like that it's hard to explain, but that like the what's it called? Henry Cavill's Witcher grunt. It's taking out those grunts, for lack of better terms. That's the best example I could give you. But let's get a little bit closer and see if you notice the lack of rumble or lack of some of those low ends. Remember, it is cutting 80 hertz and lower. Let's switch it back off and see if you notice a difference. All right, so switch is off, and the low end is a little more rumbly. Like, I can't do it. He does it so good. But yeah, here's your proximity effect without the low cutoff on. Yeah, I really enjoy this in the booth. It's very flat, not in the bad way, in the sense that it is smooth. It's a smooth flat and has a little bit of low end, has a little bit of high end, but nothing too crazy on either end. So this is great for a voiceover because you are very flexible with how you use it. Okay, so we're in our untreated room right now, and we have the AT2035 with us. Of course, you're watching the AT2035 video. So this room is roughly about, I guess, 10 by 10 or 11 by 11 and 10 by 8, whatever it is. Basically, it's that rough estimate between 10 and 11 or 8 and 11 feet by 8 and 11 feet, roughly, with about an 8-foot ceiling. That's a good baseline for what we're dealing with right now. The walls are made out of drywall. There's glass behind me. And the floor is wood, but there is an area rug below me, which makes a big difference with reflective surfaces. That reflection off the ceiling isn't going to be as bad because it's not bouncing back and forth. It's suppressed by the carpet beneath me. But there is going to be some reflections off the other walls, which you're going to notice. But probably not as bad because that area rug underneath really makes a big difference. And it's a small investment for a big return. So if you have an area rug in an area like this, highly recommend using that. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to engage the low cutoff and see how that reacts to this untreated room. Maybe helps, maybe doesn't. You guys let me know down in the comments what you think, and of course I'll find out when I'm editing this. All right, so we have the low cutoff engaged, and it's of course rolling off at 80 hertz. Anything below that's getting rolled off right now, straight from the microphone, and anything higher than 80 hertz is coming straight through. If you have an untreated room, try to do as much as you can, like that area rug, or maybe put stuff in the room. A lot of times putting things in the room helps reflections off the walls or reflections off those surfaces. What we're going to do right now is do some off-axis rejection in an untreated room. So we'll do 90s and 180, just like we did in the studio. All right, here is your 90-degree test on the stage right side, and this is how it's going to sound. No switches engaged, and yeah, I'm roughly about like 1.5 to 2 feet away, maybe a little bit more, 2, 3 maybe feet away. So this is what you're going to hear. Now we're on the opposite 90 degrees, stage left, and this is what you can hear with your off-axis rejection. No switches on, and some reflections off the walls probably. Finally, we're behind the microphone at 180 degrees, and this is what you're going to hear for your off-axis rejection. Let me know if you notice a difference after the 80 hertz is rolled off, and see if you notice maybe less reflections, maybe less rumble, or whatever it may be. But here is your off-axis rejection. Once again, on the stage left this time side, here's your off-axis rejection on the 90 degree. Low cutoff is on, and this is going to be how it's going to sound. Finally, we're at 180 degrees again with the low cutoff on, and this is going to be your off-axis rejection for the AT2035. All right, there's your off-axis rejection. Switch is off, so no low cutoff, no switches are on. I will do one more or a couple more with the switches. So I'm going to do 10 dB pad, just test it in an untreated room, and then I'll do both of them at once. All right, so we have the 10 dB pad on right now, and this is what you're going to hear. Keep this in mind when you're using this microphone and what recording format you're using, either 32 or if you're using 24, it helps on the physical side and on the digital clipping side. So all things to consider. Let's switch on the low cutoff and see if you notice how it changes with the pad and with the low cutoff. All right, low cutoff is on, pad is on, and you got no 80 below and no higher decibel voice stuff going on in the vocal. I'm running out of things to say. It's hard to do these. There's so many tests you got to do, but so little to say with it. So here it is. The two switches are on, and this is what you're going to hear in an untreated room. And that is it. We're back to vanilla AT2035, no switches on, and yeah. So let me know what you think down in the comments. And that was a fun test. I enjoy talking about this microphone. It's definitely surprising compared to other ones in the price range, and the AT2020 and the other one, which I highly recommend checking out those microphone reviews, comparing this one to the AT2020, and I'm comparing it to the AT4040 with a finale at the end of the month covering all three in one video. All right, that is the AT2035. Very cool, very surprising sleeper, some may say, a condenser microphone that had a lot more to offer than I originally thought it would. It's definitely much more valuable than that $150 mark is making it out to be. It's also much more valuable as an upgrade to the AT2020, because assuming that you have an AT2020 and you're looking for an upgrade, this is definitely a good option. Might not be the first option you have, but it's something to consider. It's also something to consider if it's your first microphone. So if you don't want the AT2020 and you want something a little bit more tuned and maybe a little bit more lively, it might not have that much more, but you might like it a little bit more, and it's not going to cost you that much more in price because it's $50 more. And if you do what I did, if you look and you keep your eye on some of these eBay auctions, you might get a good price on it, and I got a good price on this one. So I can tell you that I paid less than a AT2020, so it's pretty cool, and it's in good shape. The person who sold it was very accurate and took very good care of it. I do appreciate people who take care of their gear. That all being said, thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed it. If you liked the video, please hit the like button down below. It would be greatly appreciated. And if you have any questions, comments, or anything whatsoever, leave it down in the comment section. You could also ask me while I stream every Wednesday and Saturday. And yeah, I stream on this channel, doing dot-to-dot art, playing video games, hanging out, listening to music, all that stuff. Just pop in, ask questions. Just if you just want to talk, chat, whatever, don't matter. And as always, be safe, be kind, and I'll see you in the next video. What I'm doing ain't working. It worked for a while, and now it's just gone tits up.
Have to do better than that, fellas.